Ever wondered what kind of wild, terrifying, and downright bizarre creatures exist in the Dune universe? Sure, we all know about the sandworms, but trust me, there's so much more lurking out there. Genetically engineered tigers, shape-shifting assassins, even sea monsters that shoot lightning! So let's dive into the top 10 strongest creatures in Dune from the weakest to the strongest. At number 10, we have the Guild Navigators, also called steersmen. These guys are absolutely essential to the Spacing Guild's grip on interstellar travel because they can fold space by using their heightened prescient abilities. Thanks to continuous exposure to all that spice melange, they transform both physically and mentally, which is why they have that aquatic, elongated look and those signature spice-tinted eyes. What's amazing about the Guild Navigators is that they're basically the reason the entire universe can hop between star systems almost instantly. Their massive ships, called highliners, transport all sorts of people and cargo, which is why the Spacing Guild holds huge economic and political clout. People even divide their calendar into Before Guild and After Guild, BG and AG, underscoring just how big of a deal they are. Now moving on to number 9, we find the Axelottle Tanks. They aren't exactly a creature in the typical sense, more of a technology that's honestly quite unsettling and has a life-based component. These living incubators are part of the Bene Tlilax's top secret arsenal. The Tlilaxu are masters of genetic engineering, and they use these tanks to grow goulas. A goula is essentially a clone grown from the cells of a dead person, which allows for resurrection. The Tlilaxu's big secret is that axolotl tanks are actually Tlilaxu women who have been stripped of their consciousness and turned into living wombs. On top of resurrecting individuals, these same tanks create face dancers, spies and assassins who can mold their appearance, and the Tlilaxu even try synthesizing spice through them, although natural melange from Arrakis remains the real deal. The name Axolotl hints at regeneration, coming from axolotl salamanders that can regrow limbs. It's a dark spin on the concept of renewing life. The Tlilaxu keep these tanks heavily guarded, and it's easy to see why. The ability to recreate people, produce shape-shifting agents, and maybe even conjure up synthetic spice is tremendous power. Next up at number 8, we have the Syax. If you ever wanted a horrifying blend of human and machine, these might just be it. In the Legends of Dune prequel trilogy, which Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson wrote based on Frank Herbert's universe, Syax are humans who voluntarily had their brains transplanted into robotic bodies. Sounds wild, right? But to them, it offered a shot at near immortality and some serious physical firepower. The process involves placing the brain in a kind of canister floating in a special fluid which allows them to mentally pilot different mechanical shells. The earliest Syax were the Titans, a group of ambitious folks who wanted to rule humanity with the help of thinking machines, and for a while, they succeeded. They each took on names from myth and history like Agamemnon or Xerxes, but the big AI system called Omnius eventually outsmarted them, flipping the tables so that the Titans ended up serving their own creation. Despite being human brains in metal shells, these Syax considered themselves superior to the typical fleshy human Hreathgear, as they snobbishly called them. If you encountered a Syax on the battlefield, you'd be in for a rough day. Gliding in at number 7 is the God Emperor himself, Leto Atreides II. Leto II is the son of the legendary Paul Atreides, Muad'Dib, and Chani, and he's what's known as preborn. That means he had the memories of countless ancestors from the moment he arrived in the world. Determined to follow something called the Golden Path, which is basically a vision to save humanity from extinction, Leto merges with Sand Trout and starts a transformation that stretches out over thousands of years. In God Emperor of Dune, he's more worm than man, ruling Arrakis with absolute authority. He can crush threats with near invulnerable skin, and he's lived so long that he's seen entire generations rise and fall. By clamping down on the spice supply, he ensures that nobody can challenge him without dire consequences. People call him a tyrant, but in his eyes, it's all for the greater good, forcing humanity out into the cosmos in what's called the scattering. Physical might, unmatched prescience, thousands of years of experience, it all makes Leto II a monumental force. Rolling in at number 6, we meet Omnius, the big AI baddie from the extended Dune universe. Omnius is basically the intelligence behind the Synchronized Empire, and it's known as the Evermind. This thing came into power by outmaneuvering the Titans, those same Syax from earlier, and it quickly established a vast empire of thinking machines. Wherever Omnius spread, it created planetary copies of itself, all synced up so they shared knowledge. Its main goal was to bring order, machine order that is, to the messy unpredictability of humans, whether or not humans liked it. Naturally, that kicked off the Butlerian Jihad, the massive war in which people rose up to smash those controlling machines. When Serena Butler's child Mannion Butler was killed by the robot Erasmus, things began to change. That one horrible act made everyone angry, and they all decided to get rid of Omnius and its mechanical rule over the galaxy. Although the war ended with humanity's victory, Omnius left a final surprise by sending out a signal into deep space before its defeat. Considering Omnius orchestrated an entire empire of lethal robots and overcame the Titans themselves, it's safe to say it's one of the biggest threats the Dune universe has ever seen. At number 5, we have the ferocious Dewolves. Yes, these are wolves genetically engineered under the watchful eye of Leto II and God Emperor of Dune. Imagine a wolf the size of a small horse with sharper senses and an unyielding loyalty to the God Emperor's grand plan. Often described with gray bodies and an almost terrifyingly focused gaze, these monstrous canines patrol the forbidden forests, chasing down anyone foolish enough to sneak around without permission. They've been bred to rely more on sight than scent for hunting, which sets them apart from your typical Earth wolf. The reason behind it is that Leto II took normal wolf strains and kept breeding the largest, strongest, and most fearsome individuals until he had a pack capable of wiping out intruders swiftly. If a Dewolf pack comes barreling after you, the best advice is to run fast, or at least have a good plan. Coming in at number 4, it's time for Laza Tigers. These fearsome felines are genetically modified from old Earth tigers, raised and trained on the harsh environment of Salusa Secundus, the same planet Sardaukar hail from. Think of them as living weapons, bred for stealth and raw power. Laza Tigers have that tan coat for blending into desert backdrops, broad faces that radiate intelligence, and huge retractable claws that can reach up to 10 centimeters. Through advanced tinkering, the breeders have eliminated or tweaked certain standard tiger instincts, making them even more lethal. But that's not all. Each Laza Tiger gets implanted with a control device at birth, meaning handlers can guide them remotely. Princess Wencesia Carino famously tried to use a pair of these beasts to do away with the Atreides twins, Leto II and Ganima. While the plot didn't succeed, it shows just how dangerous these tigers are. If you can aim them at a target, they basically become unstoppable assassins. Since they're cunning and unbelievably ferocious, there's a reason why they're among the most powerful predators in the Dune story. Now we arrive at number 3, the Anelocron. These rare sea creatures hail from Caladan, the watery homeworld of House Atreides. They're enormous, tentacled, and apparently able to discharge powerful jolts of electricity. Since they dwell in the deep ocean, sightings are extremely rare, which means a lot of folks on Caladan aren't entirely sure they really exist, but they do. Descriptions from various run-ins suggest that Anelocrons maintain their shape only while enveloped by water, as if they're more energy than flesh. It's as though they're basically living lightning storms beneath the waves. Historically, the Atreides family has had some dramatic encounters with these beasts. Back during the Butlerian Jihad, Estes and Kagan Atreides almost lost their lives when an Anelocron attacked, forcing a family member to step in heroically. Later on, Duke Leto Atreides, the father of Paul, also had a brush with an Anelocron. Using local fishermen's stories as a guide, he managed to take it down without anyone getting seriously hurt, and Paul Atreides himself, with Duncan Idaho along for the ride, once flew an ornithopter into a storm filled with Anelocrons. They only escaped because Paul's quick thinking managed to steer them to safety. Among all the creatures of the Dune universe, Anelocrons stand out for their powerful, mysterious nature and the deep mythology surrounding them. Slithering into number 2, let's talk about the Face Dancers. They might look like ordinary people at first, but don't let that fool you. They're the shape-shifting wonders or terrors engineered by the Bene Tleilax. In the earliest days, Face Dancers were mainly entertainers who could assume different faces and roles. A neat trick, right? But as Tleilaxu genetic engineering advanced, these talents evolved to the point where they could absorb their subjects' memories, personalities, and mannerisms, effectively becoming the people they replaced. This means you never really know who's under that face. The ultimate Tleilaxu puppet, face dancers infiltrate political circles, pose as advisors, or stage elaborate assassinations while disguised as trusted allies. They were also programmed to obey the Tleilaxu masters without question. Of course, that kind of obedience eventually faltered in later stories, where some face dancers started developing free will. Their ability to infiltrate is second to none, which absolutely justifies their spot near the top of the list. And finally, we come to number 1, the Phoebians. These amphibious beings first pop up in Chapter House Dune, with further details in Dune Sea Child by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson. Picture a humanoid figure with fish-like traits, bullet-shaped heads, slick greenish skin that gives off a subtle oily shine, and a taller, more streamlined build compared to humans. What makes them truly stand out is their dual capacity to breathe underwater and on land, allowing them to dive to remarkable depths and handle tasks human workers could never manage. Originally, the honored Matres brought them to the Million Planets as captive workers, often forcing them to fish for stones, precious gems found in ocean-dwelling cloister mussels on the world of Buzzle. Although they are sentient, their intelligence is somewhat limited, and they generally speak in broken phrases. They were known to trade these stones with smugglers in exchange for spice, highlighting that they do have their own motivations and some sense of autonomy. Once the Bene Gesserit wrested control of Buzzle from the honored Matres, they struck a deal to restrict the illicit trade, using Phoebians in more regulated ways. That wraps up our countdown of the top 10 strongest creatures and beings in the Dune universe. Which of these creatures blew your mind the most? Did we miss any of your favorites? Drop a comment and let us know. See ya, and bye.